Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Book Club. I'm coming to you from Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and any First Nations readers or writers with us today or watching. For anyone new, my name is Suzanne Leal. I'm the author of 5 novels, most recently The Watchful Wife and my kids' book, Running with Ivan. Many of you will know, but I think we've got some new people today, so you may not, that I started this book club in a bit of a panic, really, when the lockdown happened. So 1st of April 2020, very exciting because my book was coming out until, of course, the world collapsed and closed down. So I needed to, we've got Ross Steele here as well. Excellent. Ross is my old French professor, so he'll be interested in your tale, Paul. Anyway, so the online book club was a way to engage with readers and writers during that time when we were all stuck in our houses, and it's been 4 years, and we've been meeting just about every week, and we've got a really nice community. Some people drop in, drop out. Some people come for a bit, some people come all the time, and we try and keep it relaxed. Come late, leave early, don't come, don't read, don't talk, whatever you want to do. It's the book club that is not going to stress anybody. If you'd like to join us regularly, the best way to do that is to go to my website, which is suzanneleal.com, and sign up. Enough about me. Tonight, I'm delighted to be in conversation with Paul Harmon, who is many things. He's a filmmaker, he's a photographer, and interestingly for us tonight, he's the author of this novel, Seven Treasures. Welcome to you, Paul.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Lovely to see everybody here.
It's great. I'll give you a bit of a rundown because I've because I'm the head honcho here. I get everyone's name. So we've got, as I said, Shinran from London, Ross Steele from Australia, who is a French professor and a Francophile. We've got Lance Wright, former judge and barrister. We've got a number of writers, including Barbie Robinson, Dina Davis, Elizabeth Walton, and we've got a photographer, Hazel Hogarth, and we've got a reviewer, Katrina Davis, and academic Louise Ryan, and excellent reader, Ravi and Gillian, and you. So people will come in as we keep going today. And anyone who misses it can, of course, listen to the recording. Now, Paul, just want to do a quick bio on you. So you're coming to us from Glebe.
Yeah.
Is that how you started your life?
No, I started in Los Angeles. I came out here with my parents when I was just on the cusp of turning 11, and went to Colray Plateau Primary School for 6th class, and then to Crowley Boys High School, and had a hard introduction to what Aussie life was all about, because it was a very different place then than it is today. And went on with it, and went to St. Ives High and Sydney Uni and the Australian Film School.
And you're known as a filmmaker. Tell me what part of the filmmaking process has been your favourite thing, or the one you're most known for?
Well, I'm a director. I'm a film director. My favorite things are the most creative parts of it. I guess it's story. I mean, the reason I can write is I had a wife who was a writer, and I worked with her, but I've worked with story all my life. That's been, the thing that I've always done. And I love working with actors. I love working with cinematographers. So it was those 3 things, the creative things.
And you directed, I think, Police Rescue for a number of years, was it? How long was that project for?
I came in at the end of Shotgun Wedding. I came in on there and was director on, I think, 4 episodes during their last season.
Excellent. And you also directed a film called The Dark Room. What's that about?
The Dark Room was about, I was straight out of film school. There was a rush to make a lot of films, and it was about a son who had a father who was philandering on his mother, and he became obsessed with this, and it became a tragedy for everybody.
Oh, interesting. I look forward to that. It's interesting. I've got a friend called Rachel Seifert who wrote a novel called The Dark Room, which has been translated to the screen in a film called Lore, Lore. Also actually war related. So there's some intersections there with your book, Seven Treasures. Before we get to that, photography. So film directing and then to art photography. Was that always a parallel interest?
It was funny because I used to take photographs as a kid. My father took my camera away because I wasn't taking pictures of people in front of things, and that's what cameras were for. And and I took it back as I became a little bit older. But then when I became a filmmaker, I kind of found it like a busman's holiday, and I put it away. And then when I left, eventually became a TVC director. And when that finished, or just about 2012 or something, we went to live in this little village in France where I got the inspiration for this book. And I started taking pictures of for some reasons, my wife and I had started our separation, really, I suppose. That was the beginning of it. And so I found myself alone a lot, and I started taking photographs. And there was a local, in our little village, there was a Parisian well-known photographer there, and he saw what I was doing. I was doing an essay on wind, and he started printing me big, and then gave me an exhibition in the little gallery he owned. And then I came back to Australia, and those photographs sold extremely well. And I then came up with, variety of projects. One head on the President Prize and head on. And the last exhibition I had, and I kind of hung up my boots for the time being in that world, was an essay on the Murray-Darling Basin and the water problem there. And that became very internationally kind of important work because it was a moment of time where people were very concerned in Australia and internationally about those issues. And I was involved with the First Nations people in doing that, and it traveled tremendously. It got written up all over the world in the Guardian and major spreads, and I up until just last month I had an exhibition in Lyon with it, and it was quite something. But I hadn't, I had turned my page on all that, and I started writing, and that's what I'm doing now.
So that's my interest too. So you've gone from audio and visual in films to the visual in photography, and now to the written form. What prompted the writing of this book? Was this the first book you've written?
Well, yes, absolutely. Not the first thing I've written, because I used to write particularly documentaries, not dramas. I would write stories for dramas, but I would actually pen documentary voiceovers and things. But primarily, my ex-wife Sylvia Johnson was a published novelist, is a published novelist, and I was her kind of very, very close first editor and worked very much with her in story development. So that was a process that took us through 2 books. And so I think I learned a tremendous amount from her in doing that. And then when we were in France, she was taking a long time to write her next book because she was very much an iterative literary kind of novelist. And those iterations would take 6, 7 years to find their feet. And I've worked with stories, so I said, well, why don't I write you a story? You can publish under a different name. You've got a publisher, and it can be more popular rather than high literature. more story based, and that's the start of this. She didn't want to do it when I finished the story, and I picked it up during COVID.
Huh. Interesting. So you were living in France for a year. Did you say in 2012? So
2012, 2013, yeah.
and what prompted the move to France, or the
Ah,
year in France? Why not?
why not? We had the ability to, we looked at the bank account. I've been making television commercials, and in television commercials, you actually make money, where directing feature films and high level drama, you don't. You make a living, but we actually made some money, and it came to the point where I decided I didn't really need to do that anymore, and I could just follow some creative urges, and that's why we moved to France, because we had the opportunity to do it.
It's a big place, France, and you chose a village. Where is this village, and why did you choose that?
The village is just east of Avignon, about an hour and a half, about maybe more like an hour actually from Avignon. Um, you know it well, directly east from Orange. And we went there because we found a beautiful house in, the La Vaucluse, which we had loved when we traveled through that area. And we had this beautiful house at a village rate for a year. So we were able to pack up our house, rent our house, and it paid for the whole thing. And so we just went out and lived this glorious life in France for a year. And it was cost-free, really, and we had a great time.
And how about the language? So do you speak French, or does Sylvia speak French?
No, I work very hard. I cannot sing a note, and I can't pick up an accent. So I studied, I learned my future proche and my passé composé, and but I had to translate all the time, where my wife, who didn't know those things, had an ear, and she started to speak in that year. And I could speak, I could say what I needed to get done, and we could have a very laborious lunch with somebody, but
Did
certainly
you,
friendship.
given the language barrier, and given that it was in a small village, did you find you were able to make friends with people in the village?
I think that's also interesting. And yeah, I mean, I made a very good friend. The photographer and I became very close friends. And we made a few other friends, but most of them were people who spoke very good English. One of them was actually an Australian who worked on the Franklin River campaign as a lawyer for Bob Brown, and he was living in that village. And we became drinking buddies, and a couple of French people. But it's really difficult, this French village life, and they watch everything you do. And at first you're a tourist and they want to be nice, and then they notice that you're not buying everything in the village, and then that if you go just to the next village and buy something, they notice you coming out of the car with a bag, and that's just a kind of a hint of the kind of very close knit community that these little villages are.
So from that trip comes Seven Treasures. We're all taught as writers to have an elevator pitch. Can you, if I ask you, what's this about? How would you answer?
Drunk and in despair one night after he finds himself divorced, the main character, Mark, buys a house on the internet in this little village, just as a way of kickstarting his life, with the intent of renovating it. And he goes there, and inside of it, it's rubbish, and he wants to get rid of it all and do this grand design revamp of the place. And he takes everything to the village market and sells it all very cheaply. Unbeknownst to him, a crate of things that he found in the attic were priceless pieces of art that were actually intended for Goring's house. And he discovered one unsold painting he keeps, and he decides to renovate it as an analogy, really, to renovating his own life, and starts to realize what he's got. And then there's that story of how that crate got there, which is a whole different level. And then the story of each of the lost art pieces that that he sold. Some of them were found, and it's really about a village finding redemption from some sins it committed during the Second World War.
And you spoke about those art treasures having been destined for Goering, being the well-known Nazi. So of course this plunges the reader into the Second World War. And in fact, the book is told in a couple of times. So it's a contemporary book, or more or less contemporary. And then it's also from the perspective of a man called Joseph in World War II. Tell me why you had those two stories running at once. What was the interest for you there?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the thing that interests me is moral dilemma. And the moral dilemmas really reside with the Joseph character. He is an art student whose father was an anti-fascist in Germany. And he hides in the university and hides in the study of art history in order to stay away from the Nazi machine that actually killed his father, and is conscripted to the Jeu de Paume Museum for Goering's unit, which was stealing all the art from the Jews in Paris particularly, but France generally. And he became a specialist in his area, which was Dutch art. And it's him coming to terms with the need to keep his mother safe, who he's financing back in Germany, and alive. But of course, he's working against all of his instincts, and he eventually goes rogue, and that's where the drama of the piece really comes. And then the present day story is a love story, and it's about reinventing oneself and bringing redemption to this village through this passion to find the history of this one painting that he was restoring.
I've found when I've spoken to people that have written about the Second World War or write about the Holocaust, particularly fictionally, there is exactly that dilemma. I mean, the reason why it's such an interesting area to study is that it's almost the extreme of everything. And I wonder, if I'd been born at that time, how would I have been born? Would I have been born into a German family? Would I have been born Jewish? And in both scenarios, how would I have behaved? And I'm not sure that I would have been courageous. I hope I might be, but I'm not sure. And I think that seems to be the nub of your exploration of Joseph. He is caught in a bind, and how well do you behave? Was that something of interest to you?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the nub of the story, and then there's the dilemma. There's another, it's a complex book in some ways, because there's another story line through the book, which is of a German Jewish family that escapes, and as soon as Hitler comes to power, really, and takes up residence in this village and becomes quite successful as winemakers. And they become, in fact, they fall prey to Nazism, and the village preys upon them because they're quite successful. And they're caught in that thing as well, which is like, how do I behave inside of this village, and stay true to who I am? And I think we all do that. We all fight that battle, about how do we find true authenticity, and attain what it is we want, So we've got those two things, and I guess that's what interests me, and I don't think I'm alone.
My interest in the Holocaust came in a two-pronged way. So I studied German at university, and I studied at university in Germany for a short while, and was fascinated by the language. When I came back, I rented a house beside the landlords who were Czech Jewish, also German speakers. And it was that dilemma I had of a country that I loved and knowing all its beauty, and then seeing firsthand all its, well, part of its horror.
Mm.
Um, so there's a personal link, even though I'm not Jewish. Now, I understand that you also have a personal link to the war. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I come from Jewish heritage, and I have no relatives left in Europe, as far as I can see, because they were all killed during the Holocaust. They're from Budapest. Um, so, as a kid, I was horrified by all the imagery that one saw and everything. And I came back to this story because the story interested me. I mean, I love the whole art thing. I love the programs where they find a piece of lost art and they kind of figure out who owns it. And I just love that. And I love the idea of this these paintings. It just came to me one day, this box of things. But I think what held me was the research and confronting these issues, which I really had put away in a box. And I did a lot of reading to understand everything that was happening around the Jeu de Paume Museum, which is just near the Louvre, and to understand the currents that were going on in France at that time. And that was a personal journey for me to kind of reclaim and understand that history.
So the war and France was because you have personal knowledge or family experiences from the war in Budapest, and then I presume in Germany, but
Only in Budapest.
only in Budapest. Okay. But the interest in France
I
was
was living
in the
there.
house, and then you started to research on the French experience.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. We were talking about this before we went on air, and it seems to me that there is a lot unsaid about the war still in France. I'm also researching about France during the war. What did you try and talk to people in the village you were at? Did you talk to other French people about their knowledge of the war or their families' experiences?
Yeah, very difficult. I did, and Marsh, my French photography friend's wife, was actually a translator of novels into French from English, and she was really upset by the book, and basically didn't want to be part of it because she was upset by it. At that time, I was, for my own purposes, I was calling the name of the village, the actual name I was living at. Never intended to keep that there, but I needed to keep it there for me to write it. And she knew that, but just the fact of reading this book and having her village associated with it was too much. So professors of history and a lot of reading of other source materials and the internet really were my main source, and of course all the characters of the village that I met.
So you said this is the first book or the first prose novel length book that you've written. Have you caught the bug now? Is there more to come?
I love writing. I found artificial intelligence really frightening, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I started writing a novel, and basically I don't think I'm alone, but I hate the first draft. I thought, oh, I'll write my synopses of the chapters and I will feed them into Claude and see what Claude comes up with. And then I iterated that too quickly. It just was too much, too quick. And I know I'm quite obsessed really with all sorts of science, including AI. And I know how fast all this is progressing. And it really knocked me for a loop. So what I'm doing now is I'm writing a memoir, um, uh, which is basically, confessions from the hippie trail. I had an amazing year. Um, uh, when I did the whole overland thing, and I did things which were quite illegal and quite risky, and could have landed me in many men, either dead or in the black hole of Calcutta, and somehow managed to squeak myself out of there. But yeah, so I'm writing that, but as a memoir.
What year was the year?
It was right at the apogee of the whole thing. I was on the road in 1971.
Wow.
So that's, I,
John, John Lennon on the way.
we tried stowing away. We stowed away and we got, the stories are just fabulous because we tried to stow away in Port Hedland. We first went up to Newcastle, couldn't find a boat there. Then we hitched our way um, uh, to Port Hedland and then ended up stowing away on this boat, but it didn't end up going anywhere. And we just ended up in toilets, sweating profusely.
Oh,
And
no.
and um, and then we worked. And I was traveling with this guy, and we worked on pipelines. Digging pipelines, into Port Hedland, and earned money to fly to Darwin. And I worked in Darwin building houses. I wasn't a builder, doing physical labor on houses that got blown away by Tracy, and then made my way hitched a hike through Asia and in India and yeah, Kathmandu and all at the height of all this.
It's interesting. So if it's a year in 1971, did you keep diaries? I mean, how are you remembering this, or is it a recall that you've got?
I have told people cannot believe the stories I've had. I've eaten out on them for so many years that they're there.
Yeah, excellent. And how far are you through the book? Is it?
Look, I was quite a way through the other one, and I've really just started this one, but I'm over the hump of knowing I'm going to do it. So I'm, that period when you're playing around with an idea, you don't know whether you're going to finish it. Well, that's the way I work. And I know when something catches fire, and it's caught fire. So
Fantastic. I've noticed the time, and I'm just going to hand over to, well, at least I'm going to ask everybody who's listening if you've got any questions, if you could pop them in the chat room if you do. And while you're thinking about that, Paul, do you have any book recommendations for us? We like to ask.
well, as I said to you, I don't do a lot of a lot of fiction reading. I deeply read my wife's work, and I've read some really good novelists, but I don't read a lot. The last book I read was Question 7, which, which everybody I'm sure has read and was an extraordinary book. But my kind of books, like I'm just in the middle of, towards the end of reading Nexus by Noah Harari. So I will read, people like him. I'm really involved with a philosophical group. So I've got a philosophy professor, and I regularly do work with her. So I would say Nexus is really an important book by Noah Harari, and I'd say there's another book. You wanted me to do 3. And there's a book that no one probably has heard of, which I found absolutely amazing, called Kabluna. It's again, this is it's not fiction. It's the story of the journey of this that he wrote of this French adventurer in 1939 who goes to live with the Inuit people. And at that time, of course, that was a very, very out there thing to do. And it's about this kind of cultural collision between him and them, and I found that extraordinary. And I don't know if everyone knows this book, but I always try to get people to read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, which I think is the most important book that I've read in terms of understanding what is causing all the divisions that we find ourselves in the world at the moment.
Excellent. Okay, I'll pop those in the newsletter for next week. I've got a question for you from Katrina Davis. Now, for those of you who read the newsletter, Katrina does our fabulous reviews, which are always a little bit unexpected, and I love them. Anyway, so Katrina's here tonight, and her question is, how does the publication process of a book compare creatively with the production of film or TV?
Well, this book hasn't been officially published. And so it's been really, really hard for me. I've been very successful in my creative life. I was a filmmaker, and then then I started dabbling in photography, and then became a bit famous easily doing that. And I think I'm prouder of this than I am of anything else I've done in my whole life. And I am a very when I decide to work on something, I work on it. I've got all the spreadsheets. I did all the possible research. I could not get any traction. People who read the book seem to like it, not just my friends. The people who are reading it on Amazon are saying things like, they say good things, and but I can't get interest, so it's horrific. It's just a very difficult process. Self-publishing in its own way was fun. It's a process of going through, because I wanted to finish it properly. I don't do anything that I don't finish properly. So it's been sub-edited and copy edited, and as I was saying, there was the first cover, which I was told by my marketing person was too complex for Amazon. Then the second cover, which Amazon rejected because it had a knife in it. And then the final cover, which actually is my favorite cover.
Much better. That's good, isn't it? That's a really good one.
It's a really nice cover, which was done quickest. We had literally, because they got rejected and it was launching, we had 12 hours to do it. And,
it's good.
So, yeah, so that would, and I absolutely love that cover. I wish we'd just gone there to begin with.
I've got another question from Dina Davis. Dina,
does that answer Katrina's question? Katrina, is it? Yeah.
Katrina, yes, thumbs up from Katrina. Dina Davis is also a writer, most recently of her book, a novel, The Dangerous Daughter. And what she said is, a fascinating interview, thank you. As a Jewish woman, your theme resonates with me. Wondering if you yourself identify as Jewish.
Culturally, I do. I mean, but I eat pork. No, I'm agnostic skeptic. I don't have any religious affiliation. But yeah, I mean, I've got a cultural Jewishness about me, and even though I didn't grow up in New York, when I go to New York, because my father was from New York, I feel at home. And even my son, who had never been to America, felt at home in New York, which was very strange. So, particularly on 47th Street, which is the Jewish diamond traders street, and it was very, very interesting.
Thank you. I'm aware of the time and aware that people have got people to see and places to be. And thank you so much, Paul, for your time and for giving us such an thorough exploration of your inspiration behind the book and where you've come from and where you're going. And we'll look forward to the memoir.
Well, I hope it's available on Amazon, and also it's available at Craig's at Abbey's.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
They've got copies at Abbey's. So, if you want to pick it up and read it, it would be great.
And that's exactly how Paul came to my attention, because Craig Kirshner from Abbey's recommended the book to me. So that's great praise, and it's a fascinating topic, like you say. Hidden artwork, discovery of arts, a contemporary love story, and delving into France during the war. It's got a bit of everything. So Amazon, Abbey's, and until next time, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
See everybody.